Hello, my name's Steve Jordans, and along with Dwayne Pauret, we're the co-creators of Cogneeto. We're going to make a series of videos that will try to help out both students and teachers when they're interacting with Cogneeto to get a better sense of what it's all about and why we think it's such a fantastic educational tool. This video is meant to provide an overview, just a big picture sense of what it is about Cogneeto that we think is so special and why we really hope to see it used very widely. Our goal, world. Why think small, right? Which to some extent is a theme of all of this. So to give you a really good sense, I want to kind of imagine the perfect classroom a little bit and then think about how the challenges of the modern classroom have become challenges and how Cogneeto can help us to meet those challenges. So, in the perfect classroom, we would have how many students? Maybe 5 or 10 students and a teacher. And what would happen in that classroom would be really two things. The first would be the transmission of subject-specific content. So an English in an English class, math in a math class, etc. So that content is obviously very important and it has to remain a part of any educational approach. But the other thing that can happen in a very small classroom is an exchange of ideas. And the important thing about that exchange of ideas is that with a small classroom, the teacher can literally push the students to think, to develop perspectives, to present their perspectives, and to discuss it among the students. And so, in a nutshell, the students gain a lot of cognitive practice in that situation. They're not just receiving information passively, but rather they're in a much more dynamic, active environment where they're exercising their mind. Now, I've argued in many places that this is very important. I study memory. I do a lot of research on memory, and there's a kind of memory that I think is very relevant to this. It's a kind of memory called procedural memory. Procedural memory is the memory system that underlies our ability to learn physical processes. So imagine something like learning karate or any sport that you might be interested in, or playing a musical instrument, let's say. Let's stick with that one. So if a student wants to learn a musical instrument, well, when they start, there's nothing natural about playing guitar. The student literally does need to be instructed a little bit about how to play a guitar, but the instruction alone won't do it either. You can't just explain to a student how to play a guitar and hope they play it. They literally need hands-on time. They need practice. The good thing about practice, especially effective practice, is it's what I like to think of as a one-way street. If a student just sticks with it, they keep moving further and further along that street. And as they do, two things happen. One is their behavior becomes much more fluent. So in the case of, let's say, someone learning guitar, they voice their notes much clearer, they get some sense of rhythm to their playing, everything kind of comes together in a nice, smooth, orchestrated, fluent manner. The second aspect is that behavior, all that fluency, becomes natural. What was unnatural becomes natural with continual effective practice. Okay, now here's the critical point. There is every reason to believe that cognitive skills are just like physical skills, and that includes skills like being able to think critically, or being able to think creatively, or analyzing information, or transmitting our thoughts effectively, either in verbal or written form. All of those things are processes, and just like physical processes, there's every reason to believe that if students had continual and effective practice with that, they would become more fluent at these processes, and once again, these processes would become more natural. Okay, so in a sense, our education system is literally a gym for the mind. Now, the challenge of the current context, of course, is that we don't work anymore in a situation of 5 or 10 students and a teacher. Class sizes are ever growing. That doesn't really impact our ability to teach content. We can still teach content well, but it makes it very challenging to get that sort of cognitive practice going. Okay, there's just too many students. We can only exercise them maybe one or two at a time, and even getting that going, getting a sort of back and forth going in a large classroom is very difficult. And so as a result, I sometimes fear that we're losing that aspect of our education system, and that's exactly what Cogneeto is meant to address. So what is Cogneeto? Well, really, at some level, there's nothing new to Cogneeto. It's really taking some processes that we know from the education literature are very powerful educational processes, and it's just bringing them all together and making them very logistically easy to use. So let me tell you about a few of those. One of them is, of course, peer assessment. A critical component of Cogneeto exercises is that students will first submit an assignment, but then they will see some randomly selected assignments submitted by their peers. These will be anonymously presented and randomly selected from the class, and students will be asked to assess those assignments. Now, just doing that, by the way, gives students something very valuable that they often just don't get access to, and that is a really nice concrete idea of how their work compares to the work of their peers. Okay, they will see peers who are doing better work than they are, they will see peers that are doing worse work than they are, and they will learn from both. Okay, so that alone is very valuable, but then when you actually ask them to assess the work of their peers, now you're also engaging them in what's sometimes called constructivist learning. So rather than just telling them, you know, this is what makes a good, for example, argument, you're exposing them to a number of arguments, and they themselves are saying, okay, I think that one's a good one. Why? And they are discovering the principles of what you're trying to teach them rather than just being fed them. And so that's very powerful, and there are many research studies showing that peer assessment is really powerful. But of course, it's often very clunky. Handing papers around, students know who they're assessing, there's all these social dynamics involved, and there's all these logistic problems. And of course, one of the big things that Cogneeto does is just remove those totally. You're now marking anonymously, so the social dynamics largely go away, and they free a student up to be more honest, more straightforward. All they have is the work, and so they react to the work. Cogneeto also makes all the logistics trivial, literally. There are no papers being handed back and forth that have to be brought together. Cogneeto does all that for you. So it makes the process much easier. It also includes self-assessment. So once students have assessed their peers, you can also ask them to assess their own work, thereby taking everything they've learned by analyzing their peers' work and turning it inward. That's very powerful, and again, a lot of research showing the value of that. And then, in addition to all that, these processes are embedded within what's called a formative assessment process. So specifically, students are going to hand in an initial assignment. They're going to give each other feedback on that assignment through their assessments, and that feedback is designed to help so that students can help each other improve their work. And so then now a given student will see this feedback, and they will be given the opportunity now to adjust their assignment in light of the feedback they received. So this is what's called formative assessment, and it has been shown in the literature many times to be one of the best and deepest ways of engaging student learning. Okay, you're really giving them an opportunity to up their grade by simply listening and evaluating and incorporating the good comments from their peers. So you have formative assessment, you have peer assessment, you have self-assessment. You take them all, you put them within an online software package that just makes these assignments very trivial for the teacher to set up and very interesting for the students to take part in. That's the goal of Cogneeto, bringing that engagement to bear within a context that we know has this components of very effective learning, and especially learning of those cognitive, high-level cognitive skills. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you very much for watching this video.